Hi everyone. Please let me know if I am live, if you can see me, if you can hear me as well. This is the second tour for tonight, the second live stream from the streets of Tel Aviv. But the only way for me to know that I'm actually live is to see your comments, so I'll wait for your feedback for a little bit. And then I will fill you in about what's going on here and where we're heading to as well. Yay, good. Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you, everyone. So it means I'm live and we can get down to the tour, which is amazing. It might be a little bit loud here because I'm not far from a playground and I don't want to film children, obviously, but I'm sure you can hear them anyway. So about 45 minutes ago, I wrapped up a tour on the American-German colony, really a few minutes away from here by walk. So if you missed that tour, not now, but after this tour, I'm going to give you a break because I need to get home for my Zoom tours. So you will be able to watch it because the recording is already available. And if you're watching this, you know where to find also that tour recording. So you are on my channel exactly. And now I am going to take you, well, first I think we're pretty much within the timeline because 1866, this is the establishing of one of the first, Christian communities in the Holy Land, not the first one, but one of the first American-German colony, first American, then it became American-German. Hi, Sharon. And now we are about to explore one of the first Jewish communities, and actually the first Jewish community outside of the old Jaffa walls. So that I would say pretty much, the concept for tonight, the first colonies in the Holy Land in the 19th century. So the two tours I will be doing tonight on Zoom. This will be a tour wrapping up my short series of talks on another Romanov dynasty palaces in St. Petersburg, Constantine Palace, and we're going to see one of the homes to Peter the Great as well. And also the second, hi Dorley, good to see you. And also today I'm taking you on a tour, on a talk about the immigrants from the Russian Empire, Jews, Georgians, and and Russians, Ukrainians, Christian communities as well, in Harbin, in China, because yes, there were Russian communities and Georgian and Jewish communities in China as well, and not just Harbin. But we're kind of focusing on Harbin, but it's more than that. We'll talk about it. And tomorrow I'm doing 4 tours as well. I'm taking you to the Art Nouveau Museum in St. Petersburg, which Misha filmed for us. Dolly, I remember you wanted to see Art Nouveau really badly, so we're going there tomorrow. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you. Then Misha is going to give a talk on the, we're now doing a series of talks on perestroika, so the period of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the establishing of, the Russian Federation. Then and we'll be talking about music, how the political situation, how the freedom of speech affected. Okay, I'm happy that the background noise is not a problem because the microphones should be okay. They should be coping with that, but it's still a bit distracting. Natalie, thank you so much for the tips, by the way. Thank you, and thank you everyone who has supported me. Thank you so much. And then tomorrow, so Misha's gonna be showing us how it all reflected in the music. We're gonna watch some music videos from the early 1990s, and even Misha's going to sing a little bit for us, some of those perestroika time songs. Just give Misha, an excuse and he's gonna sing. So I guess we pretty much really open the Pandora box here. Then I'm giving a talk about St. Isaac's Cathedral. That's going to be a tour for virtual tours. I normally do these tours once a week on Saturday, but this one time, and that's why I'm saying this, it's going to be on Sunday, same time, but Sunday. Well, just an exception. I was asked to do this. And then I'm taking you to the Christian Quarter in Jerusalem. There is no connectivity there. Very little connectivity, and I don't want to ruin a tour because of the connectivity issues. So that's why I'm doing it in a pre-recorded way. The new series of talks on Jerusalem is scheduled for tomorrow. Then So, yeah, and as usual, all my tours are free to join, but your support is extremely important. So thank you so much for supporting me. And the links to do that are there in the pinned comment on top of your chat. It can be a PayPal donation, you could buy me a coffee, and on my website, anaryoga.com, you can check out a lot more tours scheduled for the upcoming weekends as well. But as you know, I haven't been able to schedule a lot, yet for the upcoming weekend, but I will. I promise. I'm on it. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit over here. Well, it's just a parking area, but I'm kind of giving you a bit of a teaser. What you see now is the setting sun. A very little bit of it that I'm going to show you because it's beautiful. But next weekend, I will be taking you to the seashore for a sunset tour. One of the tours is definitely going to be a sunset tour by the Mediterranean. I promise that. Instead of a coffee, whatever it is. So whatever it is, you can just buy me there. I know some of my colleagues prefer saying like buy me a book. Some say buy me a glass of wine or something. So as a big coffee lover, I prefer coffee. But nevertheless, I don't mind. Thank you so much for your support. You see the beautiful sun. But we're here not for the sake of sun, not for now. But next weekend, I promise you a sunset tour, one of them. But today we're talking about something else. I'm not going to the sea today because otherwise the tour is going to be much longer and I can't really overrun. So we are leaving the sun and the sea for dessert. But what is in that side over there? Old Jaffa, right? So it's important to mention Old Jaffa. And Old Jaffa is a port city, right? That is more than 3,000 years old. I will be doing a tour about Old Jaffa, obviously, because it's one of my favorite tours, and it's one of the first tours for me in Tel Aviv. So it's an important place to me in all respects. But Old Jaffa, which is just a port city, that's the city where the cedar wood for the first temple of Solomon would be delivered all the way from Tyre, modern-day Lebanon. So obviously that's an old city with a lot of history, lots of stories. We are skipping it today because we are talking about the first Jewish neighborhood that will be built outside of the walls of Jaffa. Why? How so? And what for? And who? And why? Well, many reasons, many questions, and let's get down to it. So the Jaffa is about 10 minutes walk from here, really. It's not a big deal, but it was a very big deal to actually make people move. So Jaffa being a port, that's where all the immigrants would be coming, Jewish immigrants, right, making Aliyah, which means returning to their ancestral land, right? And this would be the port where the immigrants would be coming, right? Where the pilgrims would be coming. Let me switch the camera because I don't want to film children, so I'll film myself just a little bit more. Just, hang around with me for a little while because I don't want to film children. So, nobody came to Jaffa just for the sake of Jaffa. Jaffa was about commerce. Jaffa was about just a very important transport center, but that was it. So it was about Jerusalem. But still, there were a lot of people living in Jaffa, and it was the city that up until mid-19th century had a wall. It was surrounded with the wall, just like every medieval town, it had a wall. It was important to have it. And outside of Jaffa was just the dunes, was just the sand, wilderness, and danger. That's why nobody really wanted to move out. But it was too dirty and too expensive because there was always shortage of space. And despite the catchy diseases breaking out like every day, people still didn't want to leave. So eventually, only by 1887, it was possible to make Jews move. up until then doesn't mean that the Jews didn't live in Jaffa. Jews lived in Jaffa, Christians lived in Jaffa. There is a Jewish community. There are a lot of remains and archaeology and the traces of Jewish life, even in the times of the Roman period and before the Roman times, which is before Common Era. So it's out of question. But in the modern times, it just was not really possible to live there. It was too congested. It was too dirty, and it was time for a change. So let me change the camera now. No kids around, so that's why really 10 minutes walk from Jaffa would be established the first Jewish communities. At that point, it wasn't really about the need to separate from Jaffa and from the Arab community, Muslim community. It was not really that point at that time, and for a long time, for centuries, Jews and Arabs and Christians, they lived in one of the same neighborhoods, in one of the same cities, and they were doing trade, they were running business together. That was not really the point, but the idea was, at that time, to build a community. And it wouldn't be possible within Jaffa. So the idea was to establish something outside of the walls. And this is when Neve Shalom and Neve Tzedek neighborhoods would be established. Well, if you have a look, just walked to the left, I can walk a little bit to the right, and what you see is just one floor buildings, and they just, like a long line of just like two buildings, right? They're very, very long. Doesn't it remind you of a wall? Actually, well, it does remind me of a wall, and indeed, this is it. So even if you take people outside of the walls of Jaffa, they will still want to build another wall because they need protection. Because the absence of walls means you're open to all elements, you're open to bandits, you're open to all sorts of dangers. So these are sort of the walls of the I would say Neve Tzedek fortress, maybe in a way. So this street, I will be mentioning some street names today. If I fail to mention some of them, please let me know if I just forget to do this. This is the street named after Zerach Barnet. And actually every street in this neighborhood would be named after certain important, Jewish personality that had something to do with the establishment of the Jewish neighborhoods in the Holy Land, not necessarily here. Zerach Barnet was indeed, I will show you him later on in one of the places we're heading to today. He is one of the first, Jews from Europe who invested in the construction, in the establishment of Jewish communities, such as Petach Tikva, for example, is one of the first Jewish communities. They didn't really succeed. Well, but now Petach Tikva is a town, but at that point, they didn't really succeed. It's taken longer for them to establish a neighborhood there. So Zerach Barnet, I will mention him later. But we go on, and now we are on Shalom Shabazi Street. And the Shalom Shabazi Street. Shalom Shabazi is a poet, is a medieval poet. He didn't really have anything to do. Yes, Cindy, thank you so much for the coffees. He didn't really have anything to do with Jewish settlements. He lived way before that. But I guess his name and choosing his name for the central street kind of reflects the vibe of Jaffa. Shalom Shabbat, artsy neighborhood with a lot of galleries, a lot of small shops with, I would say, interesting architecture, quaint buildings, lots of restaurants, but it wasn't always like that, and definitely it wasn't like that in the 1880s when it was established. I guess one of the, I would say, centers of vibrant life in Neve Tzedek restaurant House of Dalal. This is not a paid promotion. I wish I was paid for it. So it was always a very good restaurant, has always been. I believe it's still the same, even now. I've never been there. It's a little bit pricey to me. But yeah, it is a very good place for Shabbat. They open on Shabbat. And Neve Tzedek has a lot of places open on Shabbat. So and if you are in Tel Aviv on Shabbat, oh, you just don't have to worry about anything because you will find plenty of places to dine. Well, there are no people here, so I can show you a little bit of the interior. That's the place. Looks cozy and lovely. So, and another important site here is for sure very poetic is this restaurant called Susanna. I don't want to film people, but I guess that's inevitable. Let's film the gigantic ficus tree over here as well. It's one of the symbols of this neighborhood. The thing is that Cafe Susanna opened in early 1990s. I think, well, not in late 1990s, sorry, because up until like 1995, this neighborhood was in a very, very bad state. You can see still a lot of construction going on. That's been going on for a couple of decades now. It was a condemned neighborhood, just slums. Nobody wanted to live here. Nobody wanted to buy anything, and people would just tend to kind of skip this area because it was never really safe here. But things changed little by little, with a lot of money being invested in the development of this neighborhood. And Susanna just happened to be the first business, the first restaurant that opened in the area in 1998, as far as I'm mistaken. And this was the place where young people living in the neighborhood areas, in areas nearby, would be flocking to. And little by little, more buildings will get restored. There's still a lot going on, as you can see. Not everything is finished, but it's always nice with all these bazillions of shekels invested. Now, Neve Tzedek is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in one of the most expensive cities in the world, which is Tel Aviv. And you can clearly see the architecture here is very European. You can see that. It doesn't look that European, it doesn't look that German or that American, like New England style, let's say, that we saw on the previous tour, right, with the American-German colony. No, it's not like that. Well, because the area was developed by immigrants, mostly from, well, many of them would be the immigrants from the Russian Empire that escaped the so-called Sufot Negev, which means kind of the riots in the desert. And by the desert, it actually means the riots in the south of Russia, which means Ukraine, which means pales of settlement, which means pogroms. I know it's complicated, but in 1881, Russian Tsar Alexander II was killed. And one of the people who killed him was a Jew. That gave way to Russian authorities and Russian anti-Semites to start attacking Jews. And this is how a big chain of pogroms started in the Russian Empire. By the way, just one more thing before we move from Susanna restaurant. So this ficus tree. These ficuses are also immigrants, but they are younger than Neve Tzedek. These are the immigrants from the times of British Mandate. When the British came after 1917, the British Mandate started after the First World War was over, and the Ottomans, who were allies with Germany, were defeated. So the Ottoman period finished and the British Mandate started. So the British soldiers who, by the way, one of their headquarters not far from here, the Tachana station, where we're heading to hopefully next weekend, they needed a shade because the climate wasn't exactly, well, it wasn't exactly what the British soldiers were accustomed to put it mildly. So they remembered that back in India, there were gigantic ficus trees. So they brought these gigantic ficus trees from India to here, and now they grow all over. And their roots, which are almost uncontrollable, keep destroying the pavements and keep destroying the root systems of other trees. But nevertheless, yeah, Dolia, I know many of us like this place. So and I thought that it would be only logical to take you. It's blurry. Is it blurry for everyone? Please let me know. It could be about the connection, but it also could be on your end. But if it's blurry for everyone, that is definitely on mine, and I will have to rejoin. So let me know, please. I'll just wait a little bit. And well, since the sound is not blurry and not patchy, I can at least tell you a bit more about the building you see behind my back. Okay, maybe I need to rejoin. Yeah, I will rejoin. Yeah, I'm back. Hopefully it will be sharp for everyone now. Usually it's not a problem for me to get back if something goes wrong, and after I resume it, it's normally okay. So I hope it is like this now, and you can see and hear everything. Okay, so it probably was something on my end, some connectivity issue. The building behind this tiny one with the palm trees. Yeah, sure, no problem, Dolly. Well, this red building. Oh, well, it wouldn't have been here had there not been Neve Tzedek. That's the modern day Tel Aviv, right? So Tel Aviv that we know as the city of skyscrapers, the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, the startup capital and everything. Well, it would have been here, and even the Tel Aviv itself wouldn't have been here had there not been this first settlement established way before Tel Aviv would be established. So 1887 is Neve Tzedek, but Tel Aviv, in fact, as the proper neighborhood, would be established later in 1909, and only like in the following years it would become actually Tel Aviv. So what are these buildings now? Yeah, Dole is quite timely mentioned. This is the Suzanne Dalal Center, which is a contemporary dance school and, concert hall. We are now going to pass through this archway. This shouldn't affect the connectivity because there's nothing. I'm not sure on. Well, the box office is open, but I don't know whether the... Let's see. Well, on the Law Center. And in general, the contemporary dance in Israel, the contemporary dance school is very strong, and there are a lot of contemporary dance companies famous all over the world, such as the Bat Sheva dance company that is housed, by the way, in this building. Well, I just provided you so many fantastic postcard opportunities, so feel free to share them later with me on your socials or tag me if you do so. Well, these two buildings are now homes to the contemporary dance schools. I don't know what do you mean by clear up? I don't know, Robert, what do you mean? If it's not clear up for you, and if it's just for you, probably the best would be to try to rejoin. If it's blurry on my side also, it might just take me a minute. If I just stay put, it probably will clear up. Well, but obviously these buildings have not always been homes to dance schools, obviously not. So we remember Neve Tzedek, right? So Neve Tzedek as a neighborhood was established here, and once you establish a neighborhood, residential area, you need lots of things, and such as hospitals, such as schools, right? Yeah, there are a lot of dogs. A lot of people like to come here because, come on, it's a popular place for the locals to hang out, and tourists as well, but there are not so many tourists now, obviously. So, what? Sorry, it's a little bit noisy over here. They're not happy about the dogs not being on the leash. So, yeah, but what were these buildings? They were schools. What kind of schools they were? So there would be schools for boys and schools for girls. This would be the school for boys over here. The building was definitely a bit changed over time, but that's the school for boys. And the building, the opposite building is the school for girls. I like the school for girls better. I mean, the building is nicer, a bit more girly maybe, who knows. The interesting thing was, so we are talking about 1887, right? So the very end of the 19th century. They were already thinking at that point of the establishment of the Jewish state, but not even in a very Zionistic way. Zionism is a word that again has been given this very negative connotation due to the current situation. But in fact, Zionism is just a movement of Jews returning to their ancestral land, and that didn't really have any connotations behind it. But we're not going in that way now. We're going into just, finding the identity in the new home. Those were new immigrants. They were wondering there would be Jews coming from all over. And I'll be mentioning also where the Jews would be coming. We know of some, well, I don't see the cats now, but there should be cats. But given there's so many dogs, I guess cats are just kind of chilling somewhere a little bit further from the dogs. I think so. We've seen a couple of cats today. I've seen a couple of cats, but I guess this is a very doggy place, maybe. So, and those were Jews coming from all over. And they would be speaking different languages. They would be coming from different places all over the world. They would be of different backgrounds, and they needed to find kind of a common ground because they were quite disparate, I would say, in this regards. So education really played an important role, and it helped them find a common language. So in the boys' schools, the language of education would be French, because French was the language of commerce, and commerce was important. So boys spoke French. And the girls, the education that would be done in Hebrew, which is important to remember that Hebrew was always a language of scripture, the language of the Bible, right? And it wasn't really a spoken language, but starting from the second half of the 19th century, indeed, there would be experiments and research is done in order to bring this language back to life. And indeed, it was at that point, it was still debatable, but eventually it was decided that Hebrew would become the common language for the people in the land of Israel. And it started here, among some other places as well, as Rishon LeZion and some other areas. But, the girls would be taught in Hebrew because girls would give birth to children and would be speaking Hebrew with their kids. And this is how the next generation would have Hebrew as their mother tongue. That was very clever. Now let's talk more about some personalities behind the establishing of this neighborhood. And I'm so happy that the couples are leaving from the benches, because the last thing I want is to disturb people, but I also want to be able to show you stuff. And by the way, oranges are grown everywhere here because growing oranges was a very important business. Obviously, these are not the same oranges that used to grow here at the times of Neve Tzedek and Ottomans, but look, they're just gigantic. Couple more months, that is in November, they should be ripe and ready. So very soon. Well, this is the end of August, so summer is almost over, but not for us, not for here. Well, so this is an interesting, it's kind of a tile mosaic or something. I'm not really sure how to address that, but so what we see here is basically a history of Neve Tzedek and future state of Israel told in these three illustrations. Let's talk about these people first of all. That's Zerach Barnet, who was one of the, I would say, pilgrims and pioneers of the Jewish settlements establishing, and he was one of the founders of Neve Tzedek too. A very important person is Aaron Shlush. And yes, he is great-great-grandfather to Tomer, my colleague, a Tel Aviv tour guide. Tomer specializes on Tel Aviv, and he knows a bazillion of stories because his ancestor is the founder of future Tel Aviv. At that point, it wasn't even Tel Aviv, but you kind of get the idea, because there wouldn't have been in Tel Aviv had there not been Neve Tzedek. But there's still a long way to go before actually Tel Aviv would be established. And look at this gentleman here, Chaim Amzalek is his name. The thing is that it's important to mention, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but it's important that those Christian and Jewish communities, when they came to Ottoman Palestine, they didn't come and just say, now we are taking this plot of land. Let me look into my eye. They purchased the land. They bought this land. But obviously after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, all this legitimacy kind of disappeared, but actually it was not, because the documents are still there. So the documents of legal purchases are still there. So Christian communities, Jewish communities that settled down in times of the Ottomans, everything was legal. But you were only able to buy a plot of land from the Ottomans only through a middleman who was subject to the Ottoman Empire. And Chaim Tzedek was such a Jew whose family were subjects of the Ottoman Empire. Well, you see camels here because they were one of the most popular and for a long time one of the only means of transport. No, it was not about children kitchen, just about teaching children, just making sure. I mean, children do spend most time with their moms when they're just born, right? So it made sense, because the idea was to unite people, and the language is a very powerful tool for uniting people, and also for actually doing the contrary. So that's why it was not about kitchen. No, it was not about that. It was about just raising children and making sure that Hebrew will be their mother tongue. Now you see oranges obviously is a very important trade. You see Jaffa being the port where everyone would be coming, and also that's Shimon Rokoch, who would be he was one of the founding fathers of Neve Tzedek, and he would be one of the mayors of future Tel Aviv as well. There you go. What we've got here, we have the school for girls, and girls just doing probably having a PE lesson next to their school. We see the carriage, and most probably this is Roloff Lloyd, who is taking Jewish and Petticoat. You're right, made perfect sense. Roloff Lloyd, the first tour guide who is a member of the American colony. So he's probably now on his way to take the Christian or Jewish pilgrims to Jerusalem from Jaffa. Future is coming, and also in the 1880s the railroad would be launched. Well, they started in the 1880s, so a little later the railroad that connected Jaffa to Jerusalem would be established, and I will be taking you to that train station in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem. And further on, remember, we mentioned more schools, we mentioned more buildings, we mentioned Tel Aviv. So actually, Tel Aviv as it is would be established with the neighborhood Achuzat Bayit a little bit to the side from here. I will take you on that tour too. And what you see here is exactly the first houses and the first school, the Herzliya Gymnasium, which would later on become Tel Aviv. And I mentioned that Neve Tzedek is a very artsy neighborhood. It's like this now, but actually it also became such because the immigrants that would be coming, again, mostly from the former Russian Empire, they were educated people. They were writers. They were poets. Well, okay, Rav Kook would be a little different. So Rav Kook would be the first Ashkenazi rabbi here in the Holy Land. And let's just have a look a little bit at these people. This is Dvora Baron. She is a writer, a poet, who wrote in Hebrew. That's also important to know that all these writers, they wrote in Hebrew. And we will be speaking about some of these people, but I will just show you. I want you to see the names, obviously, it's important. So, and from then on, we will be moving on. So there is a photo, a famous photo. I hope you can see. Oh my goodness. So Shai Agnon, David Shimoni, Yosef Chaim Brenner, and Alexander Zustkin-Rabinovich. So they are sort of late 19th, early 20th century writers and poets and critics that definitely changed the literature and even the Hebrew language itself. As you can see, the sun has set. Well, it's definitely somewhere already behind the sea. But we move on. I want to take you to the next area through a beautiful entranceway. So we need to go back to this plaza. Locals like to come here, just hang out, kids like to run around. There's a lot of place for them. There is shade during the day too. So and the dancers are rehearsing here. Slicha? תודה. Oh, you wanted a cat? There is a
לא,
cat.
זה לא עכשיו זה, כן? יש דברים יותר גרועים, אבל...
Hello.
כן.
So you asked for a cat? There is a cat. סליחה. And now let's go through the archway of the former girls' school. And now it's, as I said, Bat-Sheva Dance Company. And also some other dance companies are housed here. There are a lot of rehearsals going on. You can always see dancers taking a break here or viewers on a break. Let me show you around a little bit. During the mandate period, this building was occupied by the British soldiers. And there was also another floor added on this building just to give enough space to the dancers. You can do that to historic buildings. You're not allowed to change anything, I mean the way they look, but you can always add something if you're given permission, obviously. But we move on, and the lovely house that you can see, the pinkish one, is the house that belonged to one of the founding fathers of Neve Tzedek, that is Aaron Shlush. That's the Shlush house. It's rather big. Aaron Shlush was very rich. He came from Africa in the mid-1800s, and he stayed in Jaffa because this is where all the commerce, all the life was. He was very rich because he dealt with the currency exchange. We're going to talk about his house shortly, but before that, let's just have a look where we are. A lovely street, narrow street. The streets here would be narrow because land was expensive and because back in the days they didn't have cars, so it's a challenge to drive in these areas now. That's why most people prefer not to really drive here, but in Tel Aviv in general, many people take scooters or just bike or use public transport and all that at one at the same time. So yeah, I would say that it's not very car-friendly area. So the house of Aaron Shlush is here to the left. This, by the way, was his synagogue, which he later on turned from private into public, and he allowed the community members gather in his synagogue. So that's the Shlush synagogue. I like the combination of the colors here: white, blue, pink, very lovely. Marilyn, thank you so much for the tips. But apart from so Aaron Shlush, as I said, had a lot of money, and he was a very respected man. Not only because he had a lot of money, but because he managed to, well, he was able to become rich and run business while he lived in the Ottoman town. He worked a lot with Arabs, with the Arab Muslims, with Arab Christians, with Jews, with everyone. So he was a very respected member of the community, not only Jewish community, but also Arab community. Well, let's take a look here. That's the Tel Aviv I'm talking about, right? That's the big city. That's the city of skyscrapers, right? That's it. But it wouldn't have been what it is now without Neve Tzedek. And we are now standing on the bridge over the Park HaMesila. Basically, it's a park that was made along the way of the railroad that was built. That I showed you a little bit, so that will be built a little bit later. And this is the part of the railroad, and you can see the railroad over here. That's what's left of it. Yeah, so that's the railroad from Jaffa to Jerusalem. Let me show you. So this is the photo from 1930s. That's great. I'm glad you like the postcards you're taking. That's also 1930s. But we are standing on a bridge, and these pictures were taken from a bridge. This bridge was not really here up until one time when Aaron Shlush was on his way home, and he still had his business in Jaffa, so he would have to go back and forth like this with his carriage. And at one point, probably after the rain, his carriage and his horse just got stuck somewhere there. Slicha, got stuck there, and he couldn't get out, and then he had to walk home on foot. I mean, it wasn't easy. He was already quite an elderly man, and the mayor of Jaffa, the old Jaffa, asked what happened, and he told him what happened. And after that, the bridge was built, and the bridge was named after Aaron Shlush. So there is the Shlush Bridge, and we are now heading towards the house of Aaron Shlush. So Aaron Shlush lived there with his family. I think I actually have a photo. Give me a minute. I think I have a photo of his house, and even Aaron Shlush and his family, sons, next to. Yeah, okay. Let me just find a spot to talk about it. There is now restoration going on, so you can't see like a lot, but you see the house, which is more than enough. And there you go. I believe this is Aaron Shlush himself and some of his children. He also had a daughter, Margarita, if I'm not mistaken, was her name. And so that's where they lived. And in this house used to live a young boy, an immigrant from Bessarabia. Chachkes was his last name. He was a young gentleman, very aspiring writer. He saw Margarita from his window, from his balcony, because that's where he lived, and that's where the Shlush family lived. I mean, no privacy at all. And he fell in love with her. And he came to Shlush, asking whether his daughter could just go with him, hang out with him. And Shlush told him off. And he was turned down because Shlush was a very rich man, and he obviously was looking for someone a lot more established to go out with. The Chachkes was actually Shai Agnon. And Shai Agnon, you may know him as a writer who got the Nobel Prize, and he was the first writer who wrote in Hebrew who won the Nobel Prize later. So not in the 1890s, not in the 1900s, but later. But nevertheless, do you remember Neve Tzedek, who was the subject of the Ottoman Empire, and he was that middleman who helped Jewish communities purchase this land? So this street is named after him, Neve Tzedek, and that's where he used to live, over there. And well, looks like now this is the Abramovich house. Roman Abramovich is believed to have purchased this property, and he's here from time to time. I'm not sure if he's there now. I don't know. I don't want to know. But it is known, it's written everywhere that, yes, Roman Abramovich lives in Neve Tzedek, like many other, I would say, quite accomplished Israeli celebrities, such as Gal Gadot. At least she used to live here. Well, why we like Neve Tzedek after this big revamping? Well, that's because it's a cute neighborhood with I would say, architecture that have this fusion of European features, Ottoman style architecture too. It's a fusion. So obviously you can see that the people who lived here, they had lived in the Ottoman times. They had lived in the Ottoman architecture, and when they moved here, they kind of put everything they knew into it, and now this is an interesting fusion, I would say. Another street that I would like to take you to is the Menachem Stein Street. Menachem Stein. As I said, every street here is named after someone important and relevant that had something to do with the establishment of the State of Israel and future Tel Aviv. Well, so Menachem Stein was a doctor. He originally, well, he was a Russian Jew. And give me a second, I have been able to find his photo on one of the websites. At least this is the only photo I have been able to find, Dr. Menachem Stein. And he was a physician. He studied in Moscow, by the way. Then his family was sent to Siberia. So he was sent to Siberia while in exile. Something happened there. And then he was able to make aliyah in many communities. But he settled down here, but he would often travel to all other communities, such as Petach Tikva, which went through horrible times, because in Petach Tikva, it's a town not far from here. When this land was purchased, the Ottomans, they kind of welcomed Christians and Jews, but they were not too welcoming, and they sold them the lands. They were very marshy. So malaria destroyed Petach Tikva at that stage. So a lot of people died. So a lot of Jews suffered, and not only Jews, also Christians suffered from lots of diseases like cholera, malaria, and many other. So Menachem Stein also treated obviously Arabs of Old Jaffa. And then he died because he also contracted a disease after treating some patients. Let's have a look at this house over here. This is a museum and a kind of a cultural center. Remember, let me show you. Hold on a second. Let me remind you of this photo, right? So I'm sure you remember all these writers. So Shai Agnon, a photo from a younger period. It's probably the times when he was trying to court the daughter of Aaron Shlush. So many of these people, so these aspiring writers, they settled down together in the community. So such as the Joseph Brenner and Dvorah Baron, whom I showed you also on that photo in Neve Tzedek. I see, Dolly. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not surprised. So Petach Tikva was not a very easy story. So they had to start all over again. It wasn't easy because of the situation these people found themselves in. And also, I was expecting a bit more lights here, but for some reason there is no light on the museum, but there should be. And also, this place happened to be home not only to the writers, but also to a very important artist who sort of witnessed the establishment of Neve Tzedek, who witnessed the establishing of Tel Aviv and the future state of Israel. And I'm talking about Nahum Gutman, who was a little boy when he came here from the former Russian Empire. He came here with his family, and he very early showed talent for painting, and he basically painted the history of this land and of this country. Let me show you at least some of the photos of his artwork. So I was in his museum and filmed it, and hopefully I will be able to put it all together. Put it all together. He painted a lot of Jaffa, he painted a lot of communities. And I like his style. He also lived for 5 years in Europe, in Paris, and he definitely, I would say, embraced some Marc Chagall style, some Impressionist style, which he further on would kind of, try to dismiss all these comparisons, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that he managed to develop his unique style, and he is well loved and remembered. He created lots of illustrations for children's books, for the Chaim Bialik's books, who is no, sorry, that's not Nahum Gutman. I think I have another illustration. Give me a minute, and then we will be moving. Just give me a second. For some reason it's not here. Oh, I like this one very much. This is kind of shows you a Jews and Muslims together in one city, in Old Jaffa. And that's how it was. Old Jaffa was always a melting pot always. But the big disagreement started only much later during the mandate period. Because, well, I'm not even going into details now because it's going to take us hours and hours, but up until 1920s, life in Jaffa was, I mean, among the communities was quite doable. The differences would come a little later, and the clashes would start a little later, and on certain grounds when religion was brought in. Let's move on, and technically this is no longer Neve Tzedek, and I think you can see it here because the houses look very different. All of a sudden we have this Bauhaus style building. What is it doing here? I mean, it shouldn't be here, but it is. Well, this is a kind of a border between Neve Tzedek and the actual Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv would be established in 1909 as a neighborhood called Achuzat Bait, which basically means kind of a household. It was just 60 families that also came from the former Russian Empire mostly, and they purchased the land and then just played a lottery to just,
Technologia.
Technologia, yes, technologia. Sorry. So what was I talking about? Yeah, and it was just a neighborhood again in the sand dunes, which later on became Tel Aviv. Let me just show you a couple of photos, what I'm talking about. Well, that Achuzat Bait started from something like that, and the ground is just the sand. It's just the sand dunes and houses built from both sides as a boulevard. Later on, it would become the Rothschild Boulevard, and this. Yeah, and it would be just not really far from here, but it would be later, 1909. So it's getting darker, but very soon we will find ourselves in the street that's really well lit and looks even more magical in the lights. So I think the timing was really perfect. And why are we here? Because we need to see what the life was like. So we've talked already about the education, we talked about a doctor. So there was sort of a hospital, well, not the hospital, but there was still some medical treatment. We spoke about schools, we spoke about the houses, but how did people have fun? Well, what we're looking at is the Eden Cinema. So one of the first cinemas, which was established in the Ottoman period. And look at the architecture here. I mean, yes, you can see that the building is in a very bad condition. It's abandoned, and it's probably, I don't know, it must be listed. I'm not sure about its status, but definitely there is nothing going on there. But it doesn't have a roof. It never really had a roof, so that's okay. And it still has the walls, and it even still has some stained glass over there. And you can see the style. So this was clearly, again, built by the European Jews that made Aliyah in the 1880s. It's called Eden Cinema. And it was one of the favorite places to go to. There were many cinemas, many. First, by the way, there were silent movies here. And one of the first movies that was shown here was a Western. Don't remember which one. And people who lived nearby and who had I would say their apartments on the second floor liked to watch the movies for free. And mostly there would be people who lived in these two buildings. So these buildings, these houses belong to the Shlush family. Aaron Shlush built it for his sons. And well, they look very nice and expensive, but it wasn't really that expensive for Aaron Shlush because the Shlush family owned a company, well, the manufacture site for the construction material. So indeed, it wasn't really too costly for them to build the houses because they produced the construction materials, the concrete, the tiles, the blocks, well, kind of the bricks that these houses will be built from. And from the upper floors, from the balconies, they could enjoy the movies that were shown in the Iran cinema. The street is very quiet now, but on every other day of the week it's very loud here. It's because it's the evening of Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat, and well, the cafes here, the cafes that work in the street, they're closed for Shabbat, so there are no people. But once we find ourselves again back on Shalom Shabbat Street, we will see lots of people. And I'll remind you that the Shabbat Street is the central street. That's where most of the shops are. That's where most of the art galleries are. First movie was Gone with the Wind. 1941? No, Eden Cinema is definitely earlier than that. Eden Cinema worked when it was still the Ottoman times. And the Ottomans were not very happy about it, by the way, but there was not much they could do. So that's clearly earlier than that. Absolutely. And you could see also the style. That's Art Nouveau. Let's move on, but maybe that would be Gone with the Wind, but definitely that was not 1940s. Let's move on. So we are very close to, we're actually already on the Shalom Shabbat Street. More businesses will start open now. So 1 hour after Shabbat, businesses can reopen. I mean, those that do not work on Shabbat, life comes back to the same mode as before the weekend, and the public transport starts running, and all shops and businesses will get back to work. You don't have to. I mean, public transport has to because people have to, move around, obviously. But in general, businesses don't have to open. Some businesses don't work throughout Friday and Saturday. Some businesses, that's still closed for Shabbat, they have a short day on Friday and open for a couple of hours on Saturday. It all depends on the feasibility. Like if it makes sense for you to work on these days for a couple of hours. So what we see here, galleries, jewelry stores, bookstores, all interior stuff, dishes. The bookstore is closed on Shabbat. It works on Fridays, I think, till 3. I'm not sure, but it's closed the entire Saturday. It's a lovely place. You can just sit over there on the upper floor in the armchair, and enjoy yourself. A lot of clothing stores over there. That's maybe lingerie, I'm not sure. I don't know, those look like just dresses. Obviously, these are very expensive things, so I don't really visit such places, but it's always nice to pass by. That's the famous souvenir store and art gallery. They sell some Judaica and just all sorts of Israel-themed souvenirs, and not only. So in love we trust, that's what it says. In love we trust. The menorahs, the mezuzahs, or menorot and mezuzot, if you say in Hebrew. A jewelry store with some, I remember some really nice stuff here on sale. I'm happy they're still open. Some window shopping, never hurt no one, right? Sorry, gentlemen, let us just, exercise our girly rights to do some window shopping. Why not? Oh, that's a nice neck piece. I'm not sure what it's made of. I don't know. Can't see it from here now. Well, this is a very important one. It says Hi, which means alive. like Am Israel Chai, the people of Israel are alive. So I see a lot of the symbols now with people wearing it for obvious reasons. So now Neve Tzedek is a very expensive neighborhood. Just imagine, but some 30 years ago it was all slums. And people who used to own these apartments or plots of land, they become millionaires. Honestly, millionaires. Oh, okay, some more jewelry because that's probably lapis and maybe some enamel too. Ooh, yeah. Definitely some lapis here. Nice. Whenever I see something blue, I always stop and just enjoy what I see. Just a couple more things I want to show you, and we will be wrapping this up. And I'm anyway on my way to the bus, so I should have enough time to get home before the next Zoom. Well, some art galleries, as I said, lots of contemporary art. But I believe they're closed. Yeah. And they will open tomorrow. I'm glad that these places haven't closed because obviously now Israel is going through hard times. So the war, no tourism, not much going on here. Doesn't make anybody's wallet cry. No. Yeah. That's okay. I mean, window shopping isn't, well, it doesn't cost you money. Some nerves maybe, some tears, but that's okay. But just one house I want to show you, and it usually looks good at night. Hold on a second. There you go, that's one. I like to wrap up my tours by the Tamar house. This is one of the probably artsiest houses in Neve Tzedek that clearly tells you the vibe. You can clearly see what I'm talking about. If I take you closer to some of these elements here, this house is all decorated with this people, little creatures, like this lady over here. And you can see, women and men crawl in the house in different positions. It just looks nice. Obviously, it wasn't here during the times of the Arushlush and the community, but nevertheless, it's just nice to see it. And what I promised to show you, let me find the best lit spot. That's probably here. So the menshelachs, right? The locks for the shutters that keeps the shutters open. So Menschelach is the word in German. It actually means like a little person. Let me use the flashlight on the other phone. So Menschelachs, they're kind of symbols of all these sanctuary communities. So this side, it has a man, right? I hope you can see that. It's a man. But if I turn it backwards, it's going to be a woman. Actually, well, there are lots of silly legends about it. I personally don't think it's exactly the truth, but these are one of the symbols for sure. And all the artsy homes have them. You can find them in German communities, in German villages, in the 19th century Jewish communities as well. Let's put it back in the place. Yeah, very cute. So this house has them all, I would say. So, what happened to Neve Tzedek? So basically, Neve Tzedek got also crowded and had already been well established. So there was no longer really property, and it got more and more expensive with time. So further on, more families would be coming, and they would just purchase more lands. Basically, that was the point. You buy more lands, you start building, and further on, Neve Tzedek kind of, united with Achuzat Bait and, 1910, 1911, Tel Aviv would be born. So, and well, further on. That's basically the point. So hopefully next week I will be taking you to Old Jaffa, and also I will be taking you, well, to see the sunset and to see the train station. And we kind of winding it backwards to how things started. And then I'll probably take you to, well, Rothschild Boulevard to see Tel Aviv born. We'll see the white city of Tel Aviv as well. So I hope this will work out, and I hope nothing will change the plans. Let me know if you have any questions. In the meantime, I would like to go back to probably the Suzanne Hotel, well, not the hotel, sorry, the Suzanne restaurant, which is really close by. Thank you, Natalie, and thank you so much, everyone. Let's just spy a little bit on what they have there on display. Again, it's another, oh, that's interesting, by the way. These are the Kabbalah symbols, Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism movement. So that's kind of a symbol of life and divine creation. Well, just an interesting thing that I've just noticed and wanted to share with you. Let me know if you have any questions. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. As you know, all my live streams, all my tours, be it YouTube, be it Zoom, they're free to join, but your support is extremely important. So you can always leave me a donation by clicking the either two links on the top of the chat, the pinned comment. It's either PayPal, you could buy me a coffee, and please check out my website. I haven't scheduled many tours yet, but they're more definitely going to be scheduled in the coming hours and days. No, I didn't miss the ice cream. I just didn't want to give in to the temptation. So yeah, the Golda cream ice cream place is just over there, but we're skipping the ice cream place. We are skipping it. But I showed a lot of restaurants, and I showed you some galleries, and I showed you some houses, so you should be okay with that. Ice cream, I mean, who needs ice cream? We need architecture, we need history, right? So I'm joking, of course. Oh, there's going to be plenty of ice cream opportunities for sure, but well, some other time. And we did some window shopping in the jewelry store. I mean, anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. You are, ooh, okay. Well, I'm also kind of trying, not like I'm dieting, but kind of trying not to spend too much on food. Maybe that's the best explanation, kind of on a tight budget. So food is always a good way to save money. So you can always save money on food, and that's what I'm doing. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. But also from time to time I have to go out. Sometimes I work from cafes, so I kind of try to manage it wisely. It's not like I'm not starving. Don't think so. No. But you need to, budget things. Water aerobics 4 times a week. Oh, I love water aerobics. And believe it or not, I haven't been to the sea yet. It's been so wild, hectic, busy, studies, work and everything, because I haven't canceled my classes and stuff. So I keep working. There's just a lot going on. I haven't been to the beach yet. It's such a shame. I'm leaving quite soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's time to wrap this up and head back home for 2 more tours. 4 tours tomorrow, as I said, at annayoga.com. This is where you can find my schedule for this weekend, for the rest of the weekend, and more tours to be scheduled shortly. Thank you so much for joining, and bye-bye.